Chase Thomas podcast. My nephew needs me to record. See, I already hate it. I hate it.
All right, hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Chase Thomas podcast, where I'm still the aforementioned Chase Thomas, coming to you live from Knoxville, Tennessee, Everything School HQ. Joining me, parts unknown, but you'll recognize the voice, first timer on this very program. Fox Sports Knoxville, Fan Run Radio, Jon Reed is here. Jon, good morning, sir. How are you?
What's up, Chase? Thanks for the invite. Happy to talk. I don't usually get invited on too many podcasts. Usually I'm the one having to invite people and do stuff, so I am honored to be invited on. Happy to be here.
Well, you know, man, I love getting all kinds of different perspectives on this very show, because it also, you know, I want to kind of read the room and see where all of our mind, like, there's just a lot of different thinking and a lot of different opinions and perspectives on a week like this, where Tennessee's coming off their first loss of the season. A lot of fan angst, I think, this week, as you've seen, Jon, and I'm sure you've heard from calls. Just there's a lot of angst right now across the Tennessee Vols fan base, and I've gone kind of back and forth on this, and I'm curious from your vantage point, what's been the common theme that you've told folks based on what you saw on Saturday?
I mean, you talk about the angst and the callers and the fans feeling good. I mean, we don't play the unbiased journalist role, you know, at Fan Run Radio. Like, that's kind of our shtick, is that we are fans, and I felt, you know, that angst firsthand. So I mean, like, it's hard to, you know, talk fans off the ledge when it takes you a little bit of, you know, of a couple of days to get yourself off the ledge. You know, Monday and Tuesday, they were pretty tough on the radio. It's tough when you're rooting for the team to then have to come on and talk about a heartbreaking loss. Like, it's my least favorite thing to do.
Yeah.
Excuse me. But now that we're here on Thursday, most of the angst is gone. And I'm really, I won't say excited, but I'm really intrigued by the game on Saturday and to see how the team responds to some adversity.
I am definitely not excited. My stomach's going to be in knots on Saturday, because the 15.5 just feels way too high for a traditional Tennessee Florida game. I predicted on the pod last night, my gut is Tennessee still wins. My gut is this is too important. Getting back home, first big key home game for Tennessee this season. They had a weird schedule. You and I have talked about it, where it wasn't conducive to developing a redshirt freshman quarterback, no matter how confident and ready and talented a quarterback like Nico Iamaleava was, because remember this offseason you talked about, like, being excited about going to play on the road, and that being a big thing for him, which is good. You want a quarterback who's not afraid of going on the road in hostile environments. But it's one thing to say that, and it's another thing to go into Fayetteville, go into Norman, go to Charlotte, and play away from home for an extended period of time. And I think this schedule, like if it was Hendon Hooker, if this was 2022, I think we look at this first 5 games a little bit differently than we do with this group. My gut is this offense is going to get better as the season goes on into, like, through 4 years now with Heupel, that the home aspect to this, they are just a lot more comfortable at home. I think the tempo will be back to closer to what we've seen in years past at home. A lot less nerves for this offense as a whole. I don't know. My gut is, like, I understand a lot of fans who are nervous and did not, like, obviously it was a bad loss in Fayetteville on Saturday, Jon, but my instinct is it's really hard for a young quarterback and that many new pieces. Lance Hurd, who hadn't played football in nearly a month. You look at there's a multitude of reasons as to why the offense and why Tennessee struggled in Fayetteville, but I don't think we can. I think people have gone too far one way. I think it's going to be a little bit different on Saturday, is my gut.
Well, you're kind of hinting around the question that we need answered, that we're probably not going to know the answer to the rest of this season either. It's just, you know, what happens to Josh Heupel's teams on the road? Because you called it, you know, you mentioned Nico being a redshirt freshman, but I mean, we saw the same thing with Joe Milton last year. And quite frankly, in 2022, you know, that season could have very, very easily gone off the rails in week 2 against Pittsburgh. Like, you had to survive a game, and Hendon Hooker did not play well in that game. And, you know, if Pittsburgh's starting quarterback doesn't get knocked out, maybe you lose that game. So I think it's easy to point to Nico's lack of experience as a reason, and maybe it is, but you've seen it happen with some of the older guys too, with Milton and even Hooker. So I don't know if it's something philosophically that changes with Heupel. I don't know if the crowd noise makes it tougher to like go fast. I don't know if it's the uneven fronts and of course Arkansas ran a lot of 3-2-6, which apparently is Josh Heupel's kryptonite. I don't know, but what I will say is so far at home, most of those problems haven't been a problem, right?
Yeah.
Like Tennessee's won a lot of home games over the last couple of years against pretty much everyone except Georgia.
Yeah. I mean, that's their only loss at home since the start of the 2022 season.
Right.
But I think I go back to, I was in the building 2 years ago for Florida, and I remember the confidence of Tennessee fans as Tennessee went into the half up, and they had that great final drive going into the half, and I think it was Brew who ended up catching in the end zone and to put him up, but that stretch catch from Ramel Keaton to keep the drive going and everything, like it was a great drive, and Tennessee went in with a lot of momentum, and Tennessee, I think it was a good game, all being said and done, but Florida had the ball with Richardson and the chance to win. Like they get the onside kick, like they were right there. Like Kamal Hadden picks it off at like 15, but that was a worse Florida team, I think, than the Florida team coming in here on Saturday. And I think that was a much better Tennessee offense than the Tennessee offense coming in. So I don't know. My instinct is this is going to be another close, drawn out till who has the ball last potential type deal here on Saturday.
Yeah, I never know how to really feel when I go back and think about that 22 Florida game because yeah, they're throwing it in the end zone, but yeah, it was kind of fluky. It was 38-21.
Yeah.
With about 8 minutes left in the game. I personally never felt like we were in danger of losing. Now, with that being said, of course, you're one throw away from losing, and Tennessee has found ways to lose games to Florida all the time. So I understood, people being nervous. But what I chalk that up to now versus, or what I chalk it up to then versus now in 2024 when I look at the roster is Anthony Richardson was a top 5 pick for a reason. And that just happens to be, I think, the best game he's played in his career at any level. And, I mean, if you just go back and look at some of the throws he's making in that game, like, he just put it all together for one game. He probably got drafted top 5 because of that game. I don't view, Mertz or Lagway as being able to do that just yet. Now, maybe Lagway can do it a couple years down the line. But to me, that's the difference between 22 and 24 is I think Anthony Richardson just kind of had an out-of-body experience.
I also think this is, and I wonder if you agree here, John, is I think this is the first game where Tennessee's secondary is really challenged because I think Arkansas did some stuff, but it was a lot of crossers over the middle. They didn't really take any deep shots. I think Florida, and especially when Lagway's in, they're going to challenge the secondary deep. I think they're going to challenge these safeties deep 20-plus yards down the field. I'm very curious what that looks like because we haven't seen that to this point, and I think it's happening on Saturday.
Yeah, I got to give Taylon Green a little bit more credit than that just because I do feel like on the rewatch especially, it stood out to me. He had a couple of absolute dimes down the sideline where it felt like, Jermod was in perfect coverage, but Arkansas just found a way to make a couple catches on the sideline. And there was another one that Will Brooks came and tried to break up and laid a pretty good hit on the receiver, but the guy held on to it. But overall, you're right, especially from a pregame expectation thing because I didn't expect much from Taven Green at all last week. I think Tennessee kind of came out and played soft and zone, and their game plan might have been to let them kind of move the ball between the 20s, and we'll try to stop them from scoring touchdowns. Is kind of seemed to be what the game plan was, but we saw Mertz pick Tennessee apart last year, and kind of like I said about Richardson, which maybe this is the common theme. Maybe I should be nervous for Saturday. I feel like that was probably Mertz's best game of his career as well. He made some really good throws on the sideline. I remember just kind of dropping my jaw at him. So yeah,
Did he
maybe
complete 18 in a row. Was that what it was?
Yeah, it was something crazy. I've blacked that game out. I was there in the stadium. Zero interest in ever going back to rewatch it. I just know that Mertz made more throws than I thought he was going to make. So yeah, maybe he's licking his chops at playing Tennessee because it'll get him back on track.
What do you think now that we've played 5 games here? What did you get most correct about this Tennessee football team before the season? And what have you gotten most incorrect about this Tennessee football team through 5 games?
I think it's easy to take credit and say you got it right. I think everyone would have got it right. Just how good Tennessee's defensive line is. Like everyone kind of knew that on paper coming in. Outside of that, I mean, I was really high on Dylan Sampson, and I feel like he is every bit as good as you hoped he would be. You know, what I've gotten wrong so far is that I thought that, you know, we were going to get back closer to the 2022 offense. And, you know, especially after game 1 having a 1/2 sample size, I thought we were going to be back to throwing the ball across the field consistently, across the middle of the field. That was something that really disappeared from the offense in 2023. And we showed flashes of it, but it really feels like ever since Nico threw that pick to North Carolina State in the second quarter, it feels like we've gone away from letting him throw the ball across the middle of the field. So that to me has been the most alarming thing I got wrong, is that the offense still feels a lot like it did last year.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely thought there would be a little bit of a drop off running the ball. Like Jalen Wright, I thought was just special, and just with his speed, and Sampson, like we've seen flashes of Sampson, but Jalen Wright was a bell cow. Like he was the leader last year, and he was the engine that got that team to nearly win double-digit games. That offense ran through Jalen Wright, and teams knew they were running the ball through Jalen Wright, and Tennessee still were really able, outside of a couple games, do whatever they want with Wright up the middle. Sampson's definitely been better than I thought he would be as an all-purpose back. I mean, we haven't really seen as much of the stuff out of the backfield as we did against NC State early.
Yeah, I was going to ask, like, where have those plays been? Like, the shovel pass, you know, against NC State was very effective, and also kind of, you know, helps keep the pass rush at bay. And it feels like against Oklahoma and Arkansas, Tennessee could use some of those, you know, those type of delay plays to keep the defensive line off balance. But Tennessee's gone away from them. It seems like a really weird decision. I was thinking about that earlier this week.
And I guess the other one is, I'm surprised that the receivers have struggled as much as they have, because they talked about the depth so much, and there was just all this different buzz. Like there was buzz coming out on Nimrod, there was buzz coming out on Chris Brazzell coming in from Tulane, and he was more of a ready-made guy. Like Dante Thornton, I liked when he came in from Oregon, but there wasn't a lot of production on tape. Like he was still just like he was not a plug-and-play guy, and he was obviously out of position in the slot for the majority of last year. He's a lot more comfortable on the outside. He's been Tennessee's biggest big play threat this season. He's kind of settled in that Javonte Payton role for Tennessee, but I'm surprised that I think Brew is solid, Squirrel is solid, but they're not big play threats. They're not guys that you can target 15 times like a Cedric Tillman or Jalen Hyatt. They're not immediate where you watch it, you're like, oh, that's a potential Blitnikoff. Like they're fine. And I think one of the things I've talked about with Squirrel for the last couple of years is like he's solid, but he is the worst slot receiver Heupel's had here. And I don't mean, like, part of what made this offense go these first 3 years, I think, John, is that Hyatt was a game changer vertically, and it's just, those guys just don't grow on trees. Those guys are hard to find, and he was a perfect fit in this game. But in year 1, Velus Jones was a Swiss Army knife in the slot. Like, he could be in the backfield, he could be in the slot, he was all over the place. I mean, that drive against Georgia, that first Tennessee touchdown drive in 2021, Velus was just carving them up. And I think that's one of those things where I think Squirrel is solid, but he doesn't have one of those, he's not a Swiss Army knife guy in the slot for Heupel, and he's not a take the top off, like teams just, there's nothing you can do with him in space down the field. So I think that has been one of the more under talked about things, is Tennessee just doesn't have the A+ receiver right now. And when you have a young quarterback, you see this in the NFL, right? When you draft a rookie quarterback, what have the Titans done? What have teams done in the NFL? They take advantage
Titans
of those.
Have messed up. That's what.
Well, they try. They bring in Calvin Ridley.
Yeah.
Like you understand that like you have this small window, and to make things as seamless as possible for that young quarterback, you invest a bunch of money around them. And Hurd is part of that. Like you invest in Hurd, you invest in Campbell, you invest in Chris Brazzell, but it hasn't all worked out yet. So I think that's one of the things I've seen with Nico, and I don't know if you agree. I don't think it's been conducive to him breaking out through 5 games.
No, I mean, right now it feels like you busted on your 2 big offseason acquisitions. Mm-hmm. Like it feels like your left tackle and your receiving, coup. Feels like both of them are bust. You asked about what I got right, what I got wrong. Over the last couple of years, the biggest thing I've got wrong is I thought Squirrel was an actual difference maker. I thought he was really, really talented and just kind of, didn't really get a chance his freshman year because, there's so much talent ahead of him. And then last year, Joe's not accurate enough across the middle. This is why, but I'm worried that he's just, an average SEC wide receiver. And I thought he had showed flashes in the past of being special, and that just hasn't come to fruition. So that's been the thing I've missed the most on the last couple of years. It's crazy the difference in perception though, because on my Twitter, I posted after it was either the NC State or the Kent State game, just wow, the offense looks great again. We're scoring a bunch of points. Why is this offense so much better than last year's offense? I was just curious as to what people are going to say. Are they going to put the quarterback? What are they going to say? But going through the replies, so many people are like, well, we now got a very elite offensive line, and our receivers are better than they've ever been. Our receivers are so good, and the receiving room is just drastically better than it was last year. And now here we are, 2 games later, and everyone's out on the offensive line, and the receivers can't get separation. It's crazy how quickly all that's changed.
Absolutely. What do you think is the most overlooked storyline with this Vols football team right now?
I mean, it's hard to call it overlooked, but I just think that it's still probably Lance Hurd and just what's going on with him. And to me, I mean, I hate saying it about somebody that I don't know, but my question is, do you want to play football? Does your starting left tackle actually want to play college football? And, that might be unfair to question about someone. But, the stuff surrounding the Oklahoma game was a little eyebrow raising where it's like, hey, well, even going back to the Kent State game, it's like, hey, late scratch. And you're like, okay, that's fine. Save your guys against Kent State. They could put me out there at left tackle. We probably still score 30 points. That's okay. Get him ready for Oklahoma. Then you come into Oklahoma on that, Friday night and Saturday, and the news comes out Lance Hurd's not playing. And then there was the rumors, circulating that his agent was like, hey, we're not going to let this guy play unless he's 100%. That started making its way around the message boards and, the backroom fodder. And then he finally does come back out there against Arkansas and, quite frankly, looked very out of shape and almost looked disinterested sometimes. And to me, that's such a disheartening thing. And that's such the opposite of what you want from offensive linemen. I want my offensive linemen to be gritty and tough and willing to die out there. You know what I mean? I think back to Cooper Mays against Florida a couple years ago where he's basically has to get pulled off the field because he's trying to play through injury. That's the type of guys you want on the offensive line, and I'm worried that at Tennessee's most important position on the line, they got a guy that's just playing football because he's big, and that's the best way to try to set himself up for some money in the future is how I feel.
I think these next 2 weeks are huge for Hurd. But I also think this is not just a Hurd problem. This is year 4 of Glenn Ellerby, and you're in a spot where you have the dice in the portal with Lance Hurd. You knew the tackle situation. You've had time. It wasn't one of those things where you were just thrown into the fire and you're you did not have any kind of understanding that things were different. You've been rolling with Mincy and Crawford and kind of it's been a patchwork on that left side since Ellerby got here. But Darnell Wright's gone. Campbell was okay in spots at left tackle last year. I think he's been better at left tackle for Tennessee than he has at right tackle to this point. But we're going on year 4, and you've not developed anyone who can play for you any of these tackle spots. And I think that's just kind of what the portal is for a lot of teams, where it's we'll still see Hurd's got a lot of football still in front of him this season. But when you have to go in the portal and just kind of hope for the best, you're this is a former 5-star, and you're not bringing in one of these guys and developing them because it's a developmental position, and there's no one ready to step in for Crawford or Mincy when they're gone. That's the bigger issue I have, is that Hurd should be we can go Hurd on the portal, or we can go with one of our in-house guys. But your in-house guy is Dane Davis or Larry Johnson, former walk-on or a JUCO guy, who are good in spots. You don't want to be in a situation where they have to start, but you also don't have anyone behind. It's just, I think that's more of my concern, is that they're just that's what you're in this spot because of how you haven't developed that future tackle. And I understand it's hard, but that it is what it is.
Yeah, and that's why it's so bad that, like, I think if you told me Dane Davis was starting at tackle this week and that Hurd was benched, I don't think I'd be upset. And that's a big testament to how disappointing he's been so far. And, you know, you'd hoped you had struck gold because, like, hey, it's just a 5-star that's behind a future top 10 pick that wants to play. And he's not like the 5-star that's like a senior that hasn't ever really, like, proven he's a 5-star. He was still young enough to where you could still hopefully, you know, get a stud in here. But, yeah, no, it hasn't worked out that way. And, you know, I wonder if there's some regrets on not trying to get Warren to early enrollee and, you know, maybe get some extra reps this offseason in terms of getting ready. But it's hard to be too mad at Ellerby knowing, like, you do have some talent coming, you know, and knowing you got David Sanders Jr. coming, and hopefully, you know, that it solves the tackle problem moving forward. But, you know, you're 100% right. It's very frustrating to be in year 4 and then, like I said, me not being disappointed if Dane Davis is starting.
On next week's show, what do you suspect will be the leading story after this Florida game on Saturday, John? What do you think you lead with on Monday?
It's just going to be Alabama weeks here. Like, I think Tennessee wins. And I don't know how you feel, but the way I phrased it earlier this week was the Arkansas loss sucks. Don't get me wrong. It's terrible. I've been very miserable about it. But if you tell me that you get through the next 2 games 2-0, you know, and set up the rest of your next couple games at home against teams you should beat, Mississippi State and Kentucky. If you told me that you're like, 8-1 after 9 games, every Tennessee fan would have taken it. So just go out, beat Florida, and all the focus is on Alabama. Now, don't get me wrong. If we win an ugly game and it's like 17-13 and the offense still isn't fixed, a lot of people might be preparing for a beatdown at the hands of Alabama. But, like, as long as Tennessee beats Florida, I think the sole focus is on the opportunity you have, you know, for the biggest home game, you know, since last time Alabama was in town.
I mean, would you say, I still think this is the biggest game in Josh Heupel's career at Tennessee? Because if you lose
this upcoming Florida game?
Yeah, this game right here. Because if you lose this game, CFP's over, all that's over. But then you're probably going to lose to Bama. Then you've got 3 losses right there. You still got to go to Georgia. And if you lose to Bama and Florida back-to-back, you lose at Arkansas, you don't feel good about going to Athens, winning that game. That's 4 losses. Then you have Vandy, who has a pulse offensively now. And that's no longer a gimme that you kind of thought. You still got Kentucky, who's dragged some people to hell for the first month of the season. I just think it's dangerous. It's a slippery slope because it can get ugly in a hurry, especially if you lose to Florida and the offense is ugly. And then you lose to like rivalry week back-to-back. You haven't been at home much this season. I think it can just be very toxic in a hurry if Florida doesn't go right. I think this is actually the first must-win in Heupel's tenure at Tennessee.
I think it's completely fair. Let's compromise. Let's call it it's the game he's got the most to lose in.
Yeah.
Because him beating Alabama in 22, like he's gotten so much, you know, praise and goodwill just from that one win. You know, it's kind of like Doc Rivers and the Celtics winning in 2008. They lived off that title for a long time. That Alabama game has been that for Josh Heupel. But you're right that this is the first time that, like, a loss is really going to turn the heat up on him a little bit. You know, you could have maybe made the same argument in 2022. The Florida game was big, but obviously you go 2 more years down the road and your offense has looked the way it's looked the last 2 years, then yeah, this is going to get amplified. So I will compromise and say this is the game that he's got the most pressure on and that a loss will be the most detrimental to him.
Final thing here, John. What I've heard a lot this week too, and I think fans have talked about this cliche of like, we got to get back to just running the football, like run through Dylan Sampson on Saturday. Florida's rush defense is not good. We know that. I don't agree, and I wonder if you agree with me on this. The more I think about it, I think if Nico is not an X factor on Saturday, Tennessee's odds are not good because Tennessee has ran the ball well. Like Dylan Sampson still ran the ball well in the second half against Arkansas. You lost that game. You didn't score enough points. I think Tennessee is running the ball more than ever this year than they have in years past. And there's only so much you can really actually run the football before you're like, hey, the passing game has to step up. The aerial shots have to be there. We have to do stuff outside of the side to side, quick screens on first down that go nowhere to 2nd and 9, or we like have a false start and we're behind the sticks, whatever. But whether that means Nico runs the ball a lot more, because I think the next 2 weeks, Nico has to be in the double-digit carry aspect. They all don't have to be design runs, but they also have to include situations where Hendon was so good against Florida 2 years ago. He took off. Like, he extended so many plays against Florida and Alabama that were not design runs. Some were design runs, but he kept drives alive. And that's one of the many reasons that made Hendon special in 22. But I think the opposite of what the national narrative is of like, oh, just get back through Sampson. He's your best offensive player. That's a problem. And I like Dylan Sampson a lot, but this offense you're seeing cannot go and be fully functional and be one of the 10 best scoring offenses in college football if Nico is not playing at an elite level. And I'm not saying he has to do that every week or whatever, but like, you're home. If you want to beat Florida and Alabama, in my opinion, like, Nico has to make a huge jump over these next 2 weeks. Nico has to run. He can't be as timid. We have to do something about pass protection, rolling him out, whatever. A lot more RPO stuff in space, but you can't worry about Nico getting hurt anymore. The season's over if he gets hurt anyway. Like, you're in the middle, like, you're in CFP mode now. My gut is like, if this is we got to run the football and get back to what we know, play conservative, ball control, try and win like Oklahoma, I don't think that's going to win. And I don't think that's sustainable over the course of this season as you continue to play tougher and tougher competition. Do you agree with that? Because that's where I'm at.
I think you can beat Florida at home with a similar game plan to Oklahoma, but you're obviously not going to beat Alabama playing that way. And you're not going to beat Alabama if Nico doesn't get some confidence to, this upcoming week against Florida. So ultimately, you're right. Sampson's numbers always end up looking pretty good, but the last 2 games I saw they're, in the bottom 3 in terms of rushing success and efficiency. So like it hasn't actually been going well for Tennessee when they've been running the ball. I agree completely with the point about Nico. Like, he has to run. He has to be a threat. I want some design runs. I like the quarterback power, he scored on against NC State. You saw him run all over Iowa. There's been a couple plays where he's had a very clear 10, 15, 20 yards if he just keeps the ball on the inside handoff and sneaks out the back. And when he scrambles, I give him some credit. And if I'm an NFL team, I'm giving him a lot of credit because he's got kind of the Aaron Rodgers going on where he's scrambling and trying to like make plays down the field, where he's scrambling, getting out of the pocket, and he's keeping his eyes up and wait. I don't want that in college, though. I want more of what you talked about with Hendon Hooker. First read, second read, boom, I'm out. So I'm going to pick up 10, 15 yards, and we're going to keep the chains moving. So, yeah, I mean, I agree with the 11 number I think you threw out. I said 8 to 12, I think is what I've been calling for. So we're right there, lockstep on that. But, this game has to be about Nico. And Nico has to – and that's part of the reason that I said I was intrigued by this Florida game. I want to see – how these guys respond. I want to see how Lance Hurd responds to a week of, let's face it, pretty much being clowned. Like those clips on the internet would embarrass me if I was a big time player. Like, and you hope he comes back and he responds. Same for Nico, running out of bounds. Like, that's an embarrassing moment. How does he respond to some adversity, which, I don't know what he did in high school in terms of like his team and how many games they won and whatnot, but like, this is the most adversity I imagine he's faced as an athlete. How does he respond? To me, that's what makes the game so intriguing. And if Nico's the guy that we think he is, then I think he comes out and plays really well on Saturday.
That's my gut. Is I think Nico plays well, and I think this is the first like Nico is because like this NC State stuff was cool, but I think this is the first time we see, he's different. This is a he's different game for Nico. And if it doesn't come up that way, then the next 2 weeks could get dicey.
Yeah, see, I'm lowering the bar. I don't need a he's different game. I just need he's actually really good.
No, I need he's different, John. Sorry, I need he's different. I need capital H, capital D.
We can actually throw the ball across the middle of the field. Like, I'll settle for like 270 total yards and like, 2 touchdowns, 3 touchdowns. The bar is pretty low right now, and I was beating the drum harder than almost anybody for Nico, and I just need a couple of good positive things. Then I'll settle for the he's different game against Alabama. Let's just get a little confidence going before the Alabama game.
I like it. John, what can the good folks check out from you and the team over at Fan Run Radio and everywhere else this week?
Content all the time. I'm on in the mornings from 7 to 10 a.m. We got weekend coverage, pregame, postgame, even a Sunday morning recap, me and Houston Cress at 10 a.m. over on Fox Sports Knoxville. Apologies, I'm a little under the weather. I don't know if you could hear me almost choking a couple times or trying to hold off a cough, but
you're built different, John. Like, you're a trooper, man.
He's different. HD. JON2_ Reed on X. Give me a follow. Be nice. Chase, I appreciate you. That's all I got to plug.
I love it. John, thank you so much. Feel better soon. And enjoy the game on Saturday. Hopefully we have positive things to talk about next week.
Aloha.
Nicely done, nephew. The Chase Thomas Podcast. Hell yeah.